to welcome everybody and get going on this webinar. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us, and we're really excited. We've been doing webinars for a while. This is actually the first one where we've brought somebody in, and we're really excited to have her. We've got Wendy Wylde, who is the CEO of Matterflow Advisors, and we had a really good turnout as far as folks showing interest in this and signing up. So I think we've definitely this is definitely a topic that is very important to a lot of people right now, and I think due to a variety of factors, it's becoming increasingly important to have a really dialed in intake process for the sake of your business. And so we're going to cover just kind of as a roadmap for today. I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of the relationship between marketing and intake, and why we feel it's so essential to having success on the marketing side, and kind of how those two can work together, and maybe talk a little bit too about just how the market's changing and why intake's even more important for that now. And then we're really going to spend a lot of the time with Wendy, and Wendy is the expert on intake, on CRMs. So she's going to be able to really give you some practical ideas about how to implement this, because I think everybody knows that they need a good intake system, but that can vary, and people's idea of what happens then really is across the spectrum. And what we see often is that this job gets delegated to somebody in the office with maybe no experience, and you're busy doing cases, you're busy being a lawyer, and your intake system is maybe not that great. So we're going to cover all of that, and so really excited to get started. And if you just joined us, welcome. And my name is Patrick Carver. I'm the CEO of Constellation Marketing, and pleased to have with us Wendy Wylde with Matterflow Advisors. And we're gonna fix the intake. So let's get to it. So I talked a little bit about Wendy, and you'll get to hear directly more about her, but she can weigh in real quick just as an introduction. But we're really excited to have Wendy with us, and maybe you could just give us the Cliff Note version, and then we can talk more about it as we get going with your slides. But hey, Wendy, do you want to just tell us a little bit about your business? Tell us kind of your background.
Yeah, certainly. So I started Matterflow Advisors about 2 years ago, after working for a CRM, a legal CRM, specifically Lawmatics. And I'd worked for them for 2 years and realized that there was just a huge need for law firms to get extra custom care when setting up their CRMs and their intake systems. And so that just really resonated with me. I loved the ability to help our customers see the way their intake was working and how it could be improved to increase revenue, to make life easier, to increase work-life balance. And I think the thing I love the most about it is because I'm also a business owner, a small business owner, and because I do the same kind of work that you do, the way I grow my business and the way I set it up has informed so much of the way I can relate to you as lawyers and your service delivery and what happens after that. And now I've just had practice with, I think, upwards of 65 to 70 firms, stepping in and helping them with their intake process so that it can grow and they can grow. And it's just such a great experience. I love the work that I do. So I'll give it back to you, Patrick.
Excellent. We are thrilled to have you. And so, one of the big issues I see that, I think Wendy's going to be able to talk about, and, why I think she can be such a great asset for law firm owners, is that there's really often this big disconnect between the CRM and actually implementing it and making it function in a way that actually helps your business. Because what I see a lot with folks that that we're in touch with is that they get a CRM, it's got all of the features, it's got all the automations, and then it just sits there, right? And it's up to one person in the office to try and figure all that out, ends up collecting dust and doesn't really work. And so this is all about practical ways to make that actually function for you as a business owner, and ultimately accomplish what the main goal is, which is generate more revenue, and and have a better existence with your business, so that it's more on your terms. It's not as stressful, and you can build the firm that you want. So just two seconds about us. If you're not super familiar with us, Constellation Marketing is our business. I started this about 10 years ago to help my dad, who is a criminal defense attorney. And since then, we've helped hundreds of law firm owners. We're really proud of the business we built. We were just named to the Inc. 5000, one of the fastest growing businesses in the US. But the stat that makes me the most happy is over the past year in 2024, we had a 98.7 retention rate, largely because we have the ability and consistently grow ROI for our clients. So I'm going to talk specifically about the connection between marketing and intake. And so what we see a lot is that when we turn on the marketing, and especially when it starts to get going, we run into some problems with our clients, because in a lot of situations, especially with something like advertising, we're able to turn ads on and get those leads coming in pretty quickly. But if you are not set up to handle those leads, it's a mess, and it's ultimately a big waste of your money by paying for these leads. And the way the cost structure is going, the cost of advertising leads increasingly is going up and up. And so, those leads, if you're in the PI space, may cost you $500, maybe even more. If you are not picking up the phone immediately when those folks call, and not only that, but delivering a really good, robust presentation about why someone should choose your business over the others, you're in a really bad spot, and you're essentially throwing money out the door. And we've been in this situation where we get feedback as a business that hey, the marketing's not working, and we will audit this and go and look at how many calls we're generating, how many leads we're generating, and more often than not, it's a problem with the phone's not being answered, or after hours, those calls are going to voicemail and not getting called back until 2 or 3 days later. And so it's a lot of just kind of type of issues that come up. But it continues to be shocking to me how many people don't invest any time in that. And what we're going to fix for you today and give you a roadmap for how you can implement this in your business, what you need to set up, and get that baseline of the best practices that top law firms are out there utilizing to get as much value as possible from your marketing spend. So if you'll do me a favor and close out tabs and put your phone away, we're going to make this we want to make it very interactive. So if you have questions, please add them in there. I think Wendy and I are both pretty freewheeling spirits. So if you want to ask a question during the during the slides, like, fire away, we can handle it. And we'd love to actually hear some of the challenges that people are having, so we can make this as value packed as possible. So I'll talk about this. This is the whole point of my piece of this, is that marketing and intake, really your 1-2 punch combination that's going to help you go from kind of a middling firm to somebody who's really has a tight operation and is getting as much value as possible out of your marketing. And this is one of the best ways to, in my mind, get additional found money with your business. And so what you're seeing here is just, again, what I'm going to reiterate over and over is that, your marketing is not going to work properly without a system to handle those leads coming in. And what I have noticed with our clientele is that the biggest hack to get you above 7 figures is intake optimization. And so I see a lot of law firms who, some they'll come to us, they're doing, maybe $20,000, $30,000 a month. We'll use marketing, we'll do SEO, we'll do advertising. And we'll start to see good, predictable growth. And we'll get those people up to making 40,000 a month, 50 or 60. When you get up to about 70 to 80 is the range that I often see this happening, that's when intake becomes extremely important, because up until that point, the volume of case flow coming in is probably not enough where or it's enough where you can personally get involved in a lot of those business processes, right? And you as the owner of your firm are probably going to be the best salesperson, right? You know the pain points, you know how to talk to potential clients, and so you being able to kind of oversee all of that and really have a tight grasp on that, you're going to get a higher conversion rate. What appears to happen, though, is that when you start to get more volume coming in and the lead numbers are more frequent, you start to not be able to have as much control. And that's really when the system side or the operational side becomes so important, because as an attorney, unless you dedicate your role in the business to just selling, you are going to have to do legal work. And a lot of attorneys we talk to, that's what they want to do, right? They want to do the legal work. They don't really want to do as much of the sales side. And so what happens then is right around that area, if you're trying to get above 7 figures, is like you stall out because you simply don't have enough mind share and energy and time to go aggressively after all of those leads like you did when you were only making $20,000, $30,000 a month. You start not worrying about the ones that call once but don't call back. You kind of put those in another bucket. You're not following up on voicemails as quickly, and you're really focused on the ones that appear ready to buy right at that point. And you don't have that system in place for relentless, value-oriented communication with those. And this is the best way for you to increase your profitability with no extra marketing spend, because you can keep paying us, right? And you won't get any debate out of me about that. But the problem for me then comes in with, if you're not working on the intake side as well, you're going to be unhappy with me ultimately. And for us, we figured out the best leverage, the best hedge against clients leaving us is when we can help you with your return on investment. And so if you keep putting money in, we keep increasing the leads, but the net number of cases isn't really increasing, you're eventually going to feel bad about it. You're going to feel like we're not giving you value because we're not maybe bringing you the right leads or the best leads. And the truth is that you are going to get a certain amount of those really good leads where they're just kind of pre-positioned, ready to buy. They came in that day looking to hire an attorney, and they're more or less ready to do it. Where you have to apply this extra level of energy, focus, and add this systematic intake process is what I call the contesteds, right? These are people who come in and they're maybe looking around at a couple of other lawyers or having conversations with a couple of other lawyers, and they're not going to be immediately following up your call. They're not going to be calling you back, if you don't hear from them, right? They're out there kind of shopping around, seeing who actually is going to reply to them and who gives them the best experience. So just by being able to optimize that, you are going to increase the number of cases and increase the return on your investment for every new case you add that you previously weren't going to get. So this is covering the point that I'm making, is that most law firms, especially if you're a solo firm owner and you have a setup where it's maybe you and a paralegal and an assistant, you have that ability to go in and talk to every prospect. And when you get in the morning, your first thought is thinking about generating the new business, going in and looking at those people that called the day before, calling them up, giving them kind of that white glove treatment. Those are, for me, like the easier cases, right? And a certain percentage of people coming in are going to be positioned to buy. But what I see when I'm behind the scenes and we're talking with our clients, the great law firms who really scale to 7 figures and beyond, or multi 7 figures, the biggest difference I notice is that they take intake extremely seriously. And they go to the point of often hiring a person or multiple people, right, who their sole job is to follow up with leads. Because you might think that you've got a great reputation, you have maybe awards, you've got good client results, all of these things, and that very well may be true. But what I often see is that lawyers fall under this illusion that average Joe out there is instantly going to know all of that and prioritize you or place all of those values higher when making their selection. And the reality is, a lot of people, that's not on their radar, right? And they do not have the benefit of understanding your reputation. They don't have the benefit of maybe coming from a legal family where they don't, know that somebody with 5 years experience in criminal is maybe not as good as somebody with 25 years, things like that, right? They're not necessarily the most educated buyers. And so you have to kind of get over this idea that, just by being a great lawyer, you are going to get these cases. And you have to understand the best way to do that is to continue to show that value with relentless communication until they have basically made their selection and gone somewhere else. So one thing that I see as a big lever for companies is hiring a sales-focused intake specialist. And so depending on the life cycle of your business and how big you are and how aggressive your growth goals are, this may not be hiring a completely separate position, right? But what we recommend is, if you are going to be getting an assistant or someone who is going to manage the phones, don't just get your cousin who needs a job, right? Don't just get somebody who is there and kind of, is just going to show up and maybe doesn't have any training or anything like that. Now, not everybody is, of course, going to be a trained intake specialist, right? Or have gone through that training, but you can find people who maybe have a little bit of a sales background. Maybe they've done some selling at some point in their life, or have a kind of business development background or some level of experience, or even at a very basic level, just some interest in that, right? Because there's lots of resources out there that can help, folks grow. And if they are motivated, you can help steer them towards this to kind of improve their abilities, and also be proactive about setting up, to kind of taking on some of the stuff that Wendy's going to talk about. And I'm a big fan of this because what I've noticed is that so many leads go unanswered and they don't go followed up simply because the owner of the business is out of town. They get into a trial, and then suddenly the focus is only in trial mode, right? And doing the legal work. And so inevitably, as a business owner, we know, everybody here knows and has felt it, that like you are spinning a bunch of plates at one time, right? And it's just not possible for us to spread our abilities and be perfect in every part of our business at all times. And so we really recommend that you find this person or improve the people on your team to be able to facilitate this role, so that they really have an ownership of this idea that, hey, you are in charge of going after these leads. You're in charge of following up. You're in charge of making this, bringing these people in, and you can incentivize them too financially with it. But it'll make your life a lot easier, and you'll have more peace of mind that you are in fact, no stone left unturned. And the thing I've noticed as well is that you don't have to have some amazing salesperson or some expertly crafted sequence of emails that have been polished and all this stuff. Often just showing up and just doing that kind of bare minimum of following up 2 and 3 times within a week really can set you apart from your competition who isn't going to do this stuff and isn't going to take the time to do it. And the final piece of this is that I think, what Wendy will share is that a lot of the benefit of this comes from setting up a really strong foundation, right, that you can work from. But the other piece that I would recommend is, setting up weekly or monthly checks on this, where you just basically go through the lead list, you look for, objections, things that that your team is hearing, potentially review calls, review the actual call volume, because we have been in some difficult conversations where, we've had to let attorneys know that, hey, the people who are answering your phones, they sound uninterested. They're not answering questions correctly about what practice areas you service. And the attorney has no idea, right? And you have to take an active role in this to really get to the root of the problem. But once you start to establish this as a cadence and a pattern, and look over this, on a monthly basis, it will start to improve, and the number of issues will start to go down, and you'll see the benefit of adding more cases with it. So that's my part, and I am pleased to now bring into the fold Wendy, who is going to be the real star of the show and provide, I think, the most value in this webinar. And from there, I will leave it, but please add any questions that you have related to anything we're talking about, whether it's marketing or anything else, and we will go from there. All right, Wendy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Patrick. That was great. Like so much of what I heard you talking about was like the people of intake and how intake as a system helps law firms grow. And like second everything that you said, like just really want to highlight too the idea that intake is in a sense a sales role, that the folks that you have sitting in those seats to answer your calls, to follow up, those are people who are responsible for bringing in and selling your services. And so I think that's something we see a lot of lawyers miss, that intake is in fact a sales position, not entirely, but a big part of that. So I just really want to second that around the training as well, because people really matter. They're the ones running your business on your behalf, especially intake. So I'm going to talk about intake as a system, less about the people, since Patrick covered that so well. And we know that in tech, in the world right now, AI is a super big buzzword. And I'm actually here to tell you that you don't need it, that it will help your business grow, but you don't need it yet if you don't have a system that can handle all of what you're trying to do without it. And my philosophy, or our philosophy at Matterflow Advisors, is that you shouldn't have AI do something that a script can do for you. And when I say script, I mean like a computer script, like a program, because programs, automations, they're going to fire exactly when they're supposed to, and they're going to run the same script every time. And that's just a really fundamental place to start. You don't want to add AI on top of it, because it is a bit of a black box sometimes and can be difficult. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I do just want to like highlight the importance of intake as just your engine for growth, and that the potential clients that come in are just entering your system, but that it happens once they get there. The money is generated for your business and the services are offered because of the process of intake. So go to the next. So the biggest question is your intake leaking leads? Are you bringing in enough leads, but your conversion rates are low? And this is the first thing that you can look at, right? How many leads came in this month? And then how many did we hire this month? And so at Matterflow Advisors, our goal is to just help law firms build the system that will start increasing your conversion rate without anyone doing more work. And in fact, in our world, we hope that people are doing less work, and that your staff that's supporting this intake process is actually doing the work that's the most valuable, that they're doing the talking, the relating, the empathy, depending on the kind of law that you're in. So because we see ourselves this way. We see ourselves as partners in intake. And like, I think you go to the next. So why intake comes first. So you know this, but intake comes first because it is your revenue operations. It is where you are finding the clients, and it's where your revenue growth is going to happen. And so without fixing it, if you're just adding more marketing leads, as Patrick said, then you're just like gumming up a system that's not functioning already. And you may, of course, get a couple of extra leads that convert to hired because just it's a numbers game, and there might be the right connection with your intake staff, or some other thing happened just right to get that client on board. But to see true growth consistently with the leads that you would get from Constellation marketing, like you want to be able to handle those really well. So this strong system is faster response times. And I'm going to touch on this in a second. Well, I'll just say it now. So faster response times. We did this fun little study at Matterflow Advisors, and we were calling a specific practice area, but we went on their websites. We did a little case study. We went on a bunch of websites for attorneys in the estate planning area, and just tried to capture how many of them responded with any kind of automated response indicating that we had filled out their website form and or called their office. And that was less than 15% of those offices, like shockingly low. And because I'm in the business of helping law firms, I was kind of like scratching my head, like, this has got to be a joke. Like, how are they not doing this? But I realized that just because I'm an expert at this doesn't mean everybody knows about it. So like implementing these tools to get that faster response time is so important, and it can happen near instantaneously. So there's no reason not to, right? Somebody fills out a contact me form, you can fire off a text message instantly to say, hey, we heard you. We're so excited that you reached out. Somebody on our team will get back to you in the next couple of hours, right? And that gives your intake team some time, but also that potential customer is like, oh, wow, I feel tended to. I feel like my needs are going to get met with this agency or this firm, excuse me. So more qualified leads, right? If you can get more qualified leads, like what's the catch there? Well, qualifying them. Like that's one step that your intake team is doing. Is this lead somebody that you can serve? Do they need what your firm is the best at? And is your team able to communicate that with the client and get that information from them? And so having a standard way of doing that in your process makes more qualified leads come in. And then of course, you just simply will have a higher conversion rate. And I think that's really powerful to recognize that some of these really simple steps, like just a text message that they filled out the contact me form, is a fantastic way to start seeing these changes happen. And that requires the system. So before you plug in AI, you need a solid foundation. And I was just talking about this with my partner about how when you try to bring AI in, and I'm sure plenty of you are parents, but when you try to bring AI in, it's like, if you don't have a good system, it's like expecting an 11-year-old to do the job of your intake person. Like AI is incredibly smart. Like it can access an incredible amount of information, but that doesn't mean that it knows what you are wanting it to do. And so, yeah, we just don't want to, we want to make sure that we're not putting our foundation of AI on top of something that's not systematic. So yeah, AI amplifies our inefficiencies, but if you've got a good system, it really can amplify your actual results. And I'm not going to talk a ton about AI because I want you to understand that that's like once your intake system is down and you're like cruising through revenue growth, then you're like, oh, I wonder what other areas of my business I can fix with AI. So if intake is inconsistent, AI is going to amplify that 100%. And then if you're not able to train a human, then I don't know how on earth you'll be able to train AI to do it, because the training of that robot, if you will, requires that you understand explicitly the steps that you need it to take. And so when we talk about like just defining your process, that's a great place to start. Like, what are the outcomes we're hoping? What is the process that we're trying to put this tool into? Okay. All right, so intake's where leads become clients. And I mean, this is kind of simple, you know this, but your intake process, or the way I think about intake, is the moment they enter your system, whether that's through a phone call or a literal enter into your CRM system, it's that process and those steps that are going to lead to more clients that you can serve. So process. All right. So intake as the engine that marketing fuels, I think, see if I can. So marketing creates these opportunities. And as Patrick said, if we're not creating a system for these opportunities to turn into clients, then we're failing the clients because they needed you. They called you, they went to your website, they reached out to you because they need what you're offering. And all they want is for you to respond in a way that lets them know that you can help them. And in just my own personal experience, I remember I was going through a divorce and I had to call some family lawyers, family law firms. And I called 5 of them. 1 of them called me back, but they would not leave any voicemails or let me know what I needed to do to take the next step. And when I think about that and I think back to that, it's like I was one of their opportunities and they just didn't know, most of them, how to handle what to do with me, what to do with the lead. So from the perspective of a client looking for your services, that's what marketing offers you. And then it's your job as the law firm to ensure that the customer is moved or the client is moved along through your intake process. And for us, we ensure that intake is really tight, as fast as possible, and as scalable as possible. And I'm going to just tell you what scalable means to me so that we're all using the same language the same. So when I talk about scalable, I think about how few touches are required by the humans in your loop in order to get the client from new lead to hired. And then you want to be able to do that with as few touch points as possible and as fast as possible. Always, of course, tending to the client's needs and addressing the human touch that I think comes with the person who's answering the phone, the attorney consultations and those sorts of things. So scalable is fewest touch points as fast as possible with the most consistency. That's scalable. So we're going to talk about documenting your system. And I'm like, this is not sexy, okay? It's not fun to talk about. It's not like exciting, but it is the most fundamental thing that you can do for your business. Because when you're trying to grow, or even just frankly get a snapshot of what's happening, you as the business owner may understand the steps required. But what I've found is that as soon as other people come into the mix, when somebody's booking your consultations for you, or somebody's doing other work for you, you lose touch with what's actually happening. And so oftentimes the attorney that runs the firm knows what they need to happen in terms of the steps, but there's always these I don't know how else to describe it, like accessory activities that your team finds themselves doing that maybe aren't even necessary. And so going in and talking to the team, making sure that they're understanding what needs to happen, that's all critical. And it just starts with documenting it. So for every firm, you all have an intake process. Every one of you do. But the question is how often is it undocumented and inconsistent with tons of time wasters? And so that's one of the things that we think a lot about is how, what is happening. And so just documenting it, and that can look something as simple as talking to each of your staff members and just asking them what they do every day. And then what we do, one of the things that we do for every firm that engages with us is we actually come in and we will just capture what's already happening. We spend 90 minutes talking to you about every facet of your intake that you could want to know about. And many of them you didn't even know to think about. And we just document all of it as a starting place, because you can't improve something that you can't see. And if you're unwilling to look at it, it won't get better. So we know that stepping in and helping attorneys do that documentation is just a great first place to start. So that's your first like true actionable step today. Is like, if you don't have a documented intake system, like we've got a freebie at the end that you can get that will just help you do that. It's super important to where you're at in your business. All right, so I was gonna do a live demo and then I was like, well, I can't really do a live demo because it has all of our customer information in our CRM. So I'm wondering if you guys are willing to be vocal. Maybe you'll give me some kind of like thumbs up, but what I'd love to do is actually just talk you through. I can talk you through our classic intake process. And then I'd love to hear or get some questions from you about where you're stuck in these processes so that I can help answer an actual question or maybe just inform in a way that's useful, because I've seen inside of 70 law firms and maybe you've only seen inside of 2 or 3, one of them being yours. So I'll give a walkthrough, sort of a verbal walkthrough. And if you have questions about this or why these things are important, like please raise your hand, give me some kind of emoji, put something in the chat. There we go. Thanks, Danny. All right. So I think of, we think of at Matterflow Advisors as every intake process having a universal stem, which means there are some sequence of events that have to happen in nearly every law firm's experience of bringing on a client. And it doesn't really matter what kind of law you practice. You probably go through this process. So the first one is a new lead, the new lead stage, right? So you have a new lead and you've got to talk to them. Somebody has to talk to them or give them access to booking a consultation. So that's one of the powerful things that I think about with the new lead stage. It doesn't always have to be a human talking to them saying, hey, when can you book? When would you like to talk to the attorney? That can be automated with a booking form. So just remembering that that new lead stage exists, and that's when you need to be as fast as possible to just let the potential client know that you've received their inquiry, that you've heard them. And then step 2 is usually a consult. And I do know that some firms don't need a consultation, like some PI firms just kind of skip right through that because you don't need it. But most lawyers that we work with have some kind of consult, whether it's paid or free, and you're giving your time for the client. And then there's always some kind of post-consultation action. And that takes a couple of forms. So some clients are just like ready to buy and you can send them an engagement agreement. Some people are not sure. Maybe, I know in immigration, we get this a lot. Somebody needs to speak with somebody else before they make a decision because of that process. And so those people need a different kind of thing to happen after the consultation. They're going to need some kind of nurture sequence, some kind of communication that's following up, that feels authentic, that doesn't feel like a robot, so that when they're in that position of deciding, they're still getting communication from you. They're still hearing from you and your firm to say, we care about you, we want to help you, what can we do, what questions can we answer? So that nurture sequence that might happen after the consultation is really an important spot that is just part of, like, I think any business and anything, right? That follow-up process. Then I mentioned an agreement. That is a standard process. Everybody's got to get some kind of signed agreement. And then invoicing, whatever that looks like I said, something like PI, they're not capturing money up front, but most other attorneys are. And then there's some kind of hired welcome, thanks for choosing us, messaging that you would want to communicate. So those are our standard process. And so that's how we literally create, thank you, our system scaffold. And when we do that documentation with the law firms that we work with, we're asking them, what are you doing with new leads? How are you handling them? What system are you using, if any? What is the person answering the phone doing? In the consult, we're saying, we're going to manually book this. We're going to schedule follow-ups automatically via text and email. We want that person to know that their appointment's coming up. We might request an intake form for them to complete so that when they show up for the consultation, you as the attorney have all the information you need to use that time wisely instead of gathering, their home address. Like there's no reason to be spending, your hours or minutes talking about those kinds of things. So you'd gather all of that via an automation. And then that post-consult follow-up, that can all be a drip campaign that happens the same way for every potential client. But if you've got a really great system, you may be able to say, well, I've got these 2 practice areas and I want their drip sequence to be different. Fantastic. Once you understand what that scaffold system looks like, you can start creating the unique experience that the various services that you offer need in order for that client to naturally progress through the system. And then agreements, we think that should be mostly automated, right? You fill out a consultation form as an attorney, and then when that form gets submitted, all the pieces of knowledge that are necessary to generate the right engagement agreement or contract, those are already present, and the client can get an e-signature automatically. And then once they've signed, you have to collect money. This is your revenue engine, as we said. And so having that process automated where an invoice goes out or a retainer request goes out to the client so that you can gather that money to progress. And then when the invoice is paid, if you've got a good system, theoretically, you should be able to have a welcome email go out to that potential client who's now an actual client. And so each step in this scaffold gives you power to make a decision to set up a piece of your system that can do the work automatically. And that is explicitly what we do at Matterflow Advisors. And I think one thing I just want to highlight here about this system is you're the expert at your business, and you should treat it that way. And you should consider that, I think for us, because we're very consultative and we have longer term relationships with our clients, we're here to advise. And so I'm just going to have some caution for you to be mindful of where you might be stuck in a mindset that's keeping your business stuck. Oh, I want them to sign an actual engagement agreement in my office. That's cool, but maybe they're not ready in your office. And so, or maybe you could do an e-signature, whether they're sitting in front of you or you decide to send it and they can sign it later, right? You've opened doors of opportunity for your client to say yes, rather than being rigid. And so that's something that, be mindful. If you feel like there's a piece of your business that you're stuck in, you may just be resistant to what could help you. So that's just my sort of side note about resistance to changing systems. All right, perfect. All right. So the 5 non-negotiables for AI ready systems. So like I said, AI is not going to go well for you unless you're stacking it on top of a great foundational system, right? You want the AI is going to be the delight in a system that's functioning without it. And I'm sure you guys have seen ads literally everywhere you go on the internet for AI tools, and they seem really amazing. So just be careful about this. Okay, so anyway, 5 non-negotiables. Sorry about my tangent. 5 non-negotiables for AI-ready systems. Speed to response. So clients expect a reply within minutes, not days. Think about if you booked a doctor's appointment, you'd want them to confirm that appointment with you right away. You wouldn't want them to wait 3 days. Consistency and follow-up. This no leads left behind. If you've got a good system, no lead should be left behind. You should be able to communicate with them in a systematic way so that it's predictable. And what's cool about that is then if you're at this place of consistency and follow-up, but you're still not achieving the results, then you can start asking, well, maybe it's the messaging. That's where we can tinker, right? Then you can bring AI in. Maybe AI can do support you in your ability to generate better content. Clear qualification criteria. Know exactly who your ideal client is. I don't know how to say this more clearly. That is probably the biggest challenge that most firms that we work with have, is they are not totally sure what the qualification requirements are. And so when we ask, what are the 10 questions or 5 questions that your intake staff needs to ask for them to identify qualification? A lot of times we get the answer, it depends. And while that's true, it sometimes indicates that there needs to be more thinking in that process, right? Who is our ideal client? And then being firm on who that really is and being okay to say, I don't think we can serve you. And then data capture and tracking. If you don't know already, AI is very heavily dependent on data. And the more accurate your data, the more success you'll have in using AI as a tool. So things that come to mind for me when I think about that are immigration attorneys. There really is a complex question, like set of questions that need to be asked. And there are a bunch of branch points that make that qualification valid or not. And AI is actually an incredible tool for this because it matches patterns and can make decisions based on inference and data. And so like knowing that the data that you're capturing in your CRM or your intake system is accurate is going to help you implement AI when your intake system feels like it's dialed in and you're ready to add. And then the last one is client experience. Intake should feel seamless, personal, and professional. And I really do believe that the system should run itself and the humans that you've hired are there to be the connection to that client that client needs to feel connected to your firm. So think about tools to support what must happen, and then the humans and AI to be the things that make your clients say yes to you. All right, so I have this great case study, and I actually have this as a one-pager, so I'm happy to share if anybody is interested in it. And I think we have a case study on our website about it as well. But we worked with a medium-sized law firm last year, and they came to us because they had a belief that that Lawmatics, the tool we were using for CRMs, was the right tool for them to help them grow. And it took us about 2 months to implement. It took us another 1.5 months to 2 months to get all the data accurately pushing through to the end. And within 2 months, they had seen a 200% increase in their monthly conversions. They had $1 million new annualized revenue, and they had a 32x return on their investment with us. And so, and then my favorite thing about this firm was, I think it was probably June when I talked to them again, and they had told me that they were able to go from a 4-day work week down to a 5-day work week down to a 4-day work week. They were using an AI voice agent to answer their calls on Fridays when their sales team was not at work. And they had seen absolutely no decrease in conversions, that they were still seeing their whole team, progress, and that they were continuously generating more revenue. And my favorite thing about this was like, they didn't have a marketing agency, but now they're so primed to hire one and excel when they're ready to grow. But what they found was they didn't feel ready yet. And now they're ready, right? Because now they can hire new attorneys. Now they can hire additional intake staff because they know exactly what system they're plugging into. And one other thing about this case study was this firm had 3 intake sales staff member turnover in the time that they were still able to increase their revenue. So we had built a system that was future-proofed so that it was a few clicks for us to onboard a new staff member on their intake team, and then they were able to train them on the exact process without any downtime. And so that's what a good system does. It doesn't just make your client experience better, it makes your experience of your firm better, right? It's predictable. You know what to do when your staff turns over and you've got to hire and train somebody new. You have that documentation. So these are why this is such an important, the documentation is so important, but so is the system. Okay. All right. So main takeaways: automate your consultation scheduling. These are some of the main takeaways, but like quick actions that you can take. Automate your consultation scheduling with a booking link. There are so many tools that will allow you to customize when clients can book on your calendar, and removing that load from an intake person always being responsible for scheduling, like that's going to make your system faster. It's going to cut down on back and forth. Your leads are going to feel more tended to. And frankly, you're empowering them to make decisions for themselves, to seek your services directly. And then the second one is to standardize your intake form. And that, if you're still using a paper form, that's great. But that does usually require a lot of extra data pushing around. So we recommend standardizing your intake form and doing it digitally so that the information can be shared across systems. And it just makes sure that every lead is asked the exact same qualifying questions without anything slipping through. Okay. And automation and AI can only succeed if your intake is a solid system. And so when I say system, it's what I just described to you. It's these refined steps where every step has clear outputs. Every step has, ease of use. And we don't want to complicate it to the extent that we don't need to, but certainly customization is part of that. All right. All right, so we do have a freebie for you, which is just to help you document your own system. If you need any of that help, you can use this walkthrough. And if you need any additional help, you can find us. And this is our last slide, I think, Patrick, but these are just links if you want to meet with Constellation or Matterflow and talk to us about what we can do for you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Wendy. I took away a bunch of really good stuff. I have to, I think, correct you on one thing. Paper forms are not great, even though you said
they're great at consistency. Great at consistency.
If I never had to fill out another paper form at a doctor's office, I would be a happy camper. So, but no, in all seriousness, couple of just kind of like follow-up questions that I was thinking about too, because I'm actually, gonna be calling you to help my dad's law firm, who seriously, because he joined a new firm, and basically they've got calls coming in that they're not following up with until days later. The intake people are giving the wrong information. Also, all sorts of these problems that you talked about. But just a couple of questions that I've seen come up frequently. But if anyone else has questions, please put them in the chat. We'll prioritize those. But just kind of a couple of rapid fire. Like I know you come from Lawmatics. Why do you like Lawmatics? And maybe not so much why you like Lawmatics, but what do you think are kind of must-haves when picking a CRM, or which ones do you think are the best options for average law firms?
Yeah. So I think that it's critical that you can use your CRM to communicate with your clients. So that's the whole premise of them. So that's pretty easy to find. But in the case of like law firms, your intake process is accounting for your signing of contracts, communication with your client, and usually some kind of fee that needs to be collected before you can consider them hired. So if your CRM can do all three of those things, then you're set up to get started well. And then automation is a critical path. If your CRM does not have automations, and automations are simply repeatable actions that happen when a trigger occurs, and that trigger can be a variety of things. So yeah, I think automation now is a critical component. And if you're not using automation to move your matters or your clients along in the pipeline, then you're probably missing out. You're missing out. I hate to be so definitive, but it really needs the goal of those automations are to pull your client forward, whether your staff is doing everything right or not.
Makes sense. Is there an ideal cadence as far as communication, just kind of, I guess, generally speaking about, just one that I'm familiar with is like 5 touch points in 5 days. Do you have a strong opinion on that, or just, any thoughts on kind of like how people, how far you should go as far as being responsive, and persistent, but also not like spamming people?
Yeah. So I would say that that's more an issue right when the PNC or the potential client shows up in your firm, however that happens. You do want to have quickness with the initial 1 to 2 responses. But then I'd say after that, you're talking about like more practice area needs, because some are just slower cycles.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. And then the other thing that we like to think about is like, how do you, the lawyer, like to communicate? Are you a high touch, medium touch, or low touch attorney? Because if you're a low touch attorney, but your intake process is like every day we're sending you a message, when they get to the hired process, they're going to feel some disconnect. So truly aligning like how you want to be communicating with how you communicate in that intake process in an automated way is more important after the initial communication, 1 to 2 touch points.
Makes sense. How do you feel about outsourced receptionists, like your, back office Betty's and Ruby, or those kind of folks? I've heard mixed, some good, some bad. What's your take?
I like them, and I think they're really powerful tools for firms, particularly in the overflow capacity. So maybe you have 2 intake people, but there is inevitably time when both of them are already talking to somebody, and you want that phone to roll over to another real person. And that's going to be better than that call going to voicemail, and then your team's busy all day, and then they don't get back to them until tomorrow. So I do think that these virtual voicemail or virtual reception firms are really beneficial to firms for just capturing more of those calls. But they really need to be integrated with your CRM, because if you don't want to have emails coming to you in your like random firm email box that a new client exists. You want that to be like right into your CRM, receiving that first messaging. And usually if you've got a good system, you can cater to like, was this a reception, like AI reception or virtual reception? You can respond to them differently.
And at that point, are you mostly thinking, that they're really on the phone, just trying to like grab that call, get their information, and then set the stage for the next? Or do you find some of them are good at selling, or like where's kind of the line that you draw with that?
Yeah, I would say that I don't think most of them are good at selling, but some of them can be good at just capturing the basic intake that you need. And it's going to cost you more. But if you've got a digital form and somebody can answer that call immediately and get that form filled out, even if it's not, like you wouldn't rate them an A+, it's still beneficial to you to have that call answered as a law firm. So yeah, I highly recommend them.
And with your services, at least in my mind, because I've actually, many moons ago thought, oh, this would be a great, additional service for us to do. And then I got into it, and I was like, this is the worst decision I've ever made in my life, of trying to like go through, and they're like, hey, and then I became de facto like tech support for, hey, like, can we get on the call, and you show me how to do that thing in the CRM again? And I'm just like, I hated it. I hated all of it. So, now I didn't even remember my question. Okay. The question I have is, how long does this take you to kind of set all this up? Right. So I think I understand the process as far as, you're coming in, you're mapping it out, and then, what's like an engagement look like for, that same kind of like mid-sized law firm you mentioned, to bring them in, and kind of get things where, they're starting to see like, the changes in effect. Yeah,
I'd say for us, we have like an upfront process where we document your system and then make a bunch of recommendations. That's our audit. It takes about a week. And then if you engage for what we recommend, the build or the update of your existing CRM, then it takes us about 4 to 6 weeks. And we've got like really structured process and a team that helps us move that through. So within 8 weeks, you can see the result. And we always help train and document the new system as well. So we'll make sure your staff knows how to use the CRM. And we always are available, like you said, to answer that call, like, hey, can we hop on a call and show us that thing? So for us, it's about 8 weeks end to end.
Do you, do you have to be tech savvy, or how much technology information do you, or experience do you need? Because, I'm just thinking about some folks kind of have like, legacy receptionists, right, who've been around for a long time and kind of know a lot of the ins and outs of the business, but maybe are extremely averse to change. Do you encounter that? I would imagine at some level. Like, what are your thoughts there?
We do encounter that. And I don't know if we encounter that. And oftentimes those people find that they are not happy at the firm anymore. And we do see some turnover. So like, I'll be transparent about that. A lot of times seasoned folks do not like the change. They want to keep sending manual messages about consults. They want to, that's where they feel value. And I think they feel a struggle with a new system that's going to do it for them. But we've seen it be successful too. We've seen plenty of firms have people that love the change. And so you don't have to be super tech savvy to use a system. You have to be pretty tech savvy to build the system.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, and I've seen this in our own business. I think you just have to have a willingness and capacity for change, right? It's not so much like the technology is the barrier there. It's more of just the mindset of like, I like doing it this way, and I'm not interested in changing for anyone. Okay.
Yeah, I'd say we help a lot with change management generally. So that is a big part of like getting somebody launched, is helping them with the change management in the firm and the sort of stickiness that old systems have.
Beautiful. Okay. Awesome. I've looked around. I don't think I've seen any questions come through. So if you, if you do have any kind of last ones, I think, I mean, it is 1:02, but I can stick around for a second. But if not, we've got the information up here. You can find, you can connect with Wendy at matterflowadvisors.com, or if you're looking to talk about marketing, obviously can come chat with us as well. But I just wanted to say thanks so much for coming and sharing this. And I think it's such an important thing to do for any business, but for law firms specifically. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Patrick, for having me.
Thank you. This
Awesome.
was great.
Thank you all for taking a moment out of your day to come share it with us. We will have this on a replay. So if you want to share it with anyone, we'll make sure that gets out to you. And of course, if you want to get the freebie, the walkthrough of the intake process, we'll get that to you as well. So again, thank you so much, and I hope everybody has a lovely weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.